Hello ladies and gentlemen, so I've had the Sony E 35mm for a couple of weeks now. I've taken it downtown to take pictures, I've taken it to some cosplay conventions and that sort of thing, and so far I've really liked pretty much everything about it, but I don't think it's like a perfect lens, especially given the high price tag. So in this video, I'm going to go over what I like and don't like about it, and then some alternatives that you might want to consider. So let's hop into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is just how compact this lens is. You can see it balances pretty nicely on my A6000. It's not like microscopic, compared to like the kit lens zoom, for example, that I'm using on this camera right here. But it balances super nicely and it feels like it was, obviously designed for this camera because it is. For comparison's sake, it's a little bit more compact than the Sigma 30mm, actually quite a bit more compact as a matter of fact. I would say it's a little bit lighter. The Sigma feels a little bit nicer in the hand, a little bit heavier. And then, of course, here's a banana for scale. I've said in a lot of videos that, having a compact kit is what drove me away from Canon like 6 years ago, I think I switched. And these are like the exact kind of lenses I'm talking about. Like good quality, super tiny, super lightweight, gets a thumbs up from me. Now as far as build quality goes, I found that a lot of like NEX lenses, from 13 years ago are kind of built like crap. This one is decent. This is definitely not on the same degree as like a Sony GM lens, but you can definitely feel the quality. It's mostly metal, I think. There's definitely some plastic in there, but it feels good in the hand. It feels decently heavy, and I feel like, you could probably drop this like a foot or two and it might not break, but, you're not about to see me try that on this video. Don't try that at home. It does of course come with a back cap, pretty standard Sony back cap, and a front cap. Extremely standard, nothing much to say. It should be noted that it does not come with a lens hood, but if you so desire a lens hood, you can pick them up online for like 15-20 bucks. There's like 100 different third-party aftermarket options. Then finally, the aesthetics of a lens. I know that's kind of insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but it's pretty nice looking. I mean, it's very standard, it's very basic, there's nothing unique or special about it. It's not pretty, it's not ugly, and I do like how it contrasts on my pure white ZV-E10. Now from an actual like ergonomics and daily usability perspective, it's decent. I mean, obviously there's no physical switches or buttons on the lens. You don't have like an AF, MF switch, you don't have like a customizable button like you might see on some more expensive lenses, but it's lightweight and compact enough to not be like cumbersome, but it's still just big enough to provide like, decent grip if you're, shooting two-handed, and it's light enough to where you can easily shoot with one hand, no issue. Now as far as weather sealing goes, it doesn't have complete gasket sealing, but Sony claims it is dust and moisture resistant. I usually am pretty careless with my lenses. I took this out in like some light snow and it didn't have any issues on my ZV-E10. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you do it yourself, but it's probably not going to die from it. And then finally, one of the major strengths it has over the Sigma 30mm that I keep mentioning is that this lens does have optical image stabilization, and that doesn't matter as much these days because so many bodies are stabilized. But I have an A6000, which is not stabilized, and I have a ZV-E10, which is not stabilized. So being able to get handheld shots at pretty slow shutter speeds has been a complete blessing over using something like the Sigma 30, which is not stabilized. And then as far as autofocus goes, Sony lenses are, known for their good autofocus. This lens did come out in like 2013, 2012, I don't know, it was like 13 years ago, I think. So the autofocus is definitely good, but it's not quite on the same level as like a newer lens, like something that came out in the last couple of years. I didn't have many issues with it, but I did find that it did some hunting, and I definitely had a pretty bad hit rate in like low light conditions. When I say bad, I mean like 95% was in focus, but comparing to something like, again, the Sigma 30, which is newer, it just wasn't quite as good. But I don't think it's like bad enough to, say don't buy this lens. In good lighting though, IAF, tracking, everything like that, I have the amazing Sony autofocus features that we've come to know and love. They work great. It's just, when you start losing some light, it can be a bit hit or miss. And now finally, let's talk about image quality because that's what everybody actually cares about. So this lens is actually pretty nice. So I tested it, from F1.8 all the way to like F22, I think that's the max aperture. And shooting wide open at F1.8, I found pretty good results. Now, my lens tests aren't very scientific. You know, I'm not looking at like MTF charts and all that crap. I just, you know, put them into Lightroom and then zoom in a little bit. But shooting at f1.8, things are mostly sharp, but you are working with a very, very thin focus plane. So, you know, just keep that in mind. I found for shooting portraits and whatnot that f2.5, f2.8 was about my sweet spot, to where I'd get a good amount of subject isolation and background defocus, but enough of the subject would still be in focus. You know, their eyes aren't like out of focus and stuff like that. And then for like landscape and city shots and that sort of thing, f5.6 was definitely like, I think ideal, but I found I shot most of my stuff at f8, you know, as is standard practice shooting during the day. As for like bokeh and defocusing the background, I think pictures are better than me just yapping about it for like an hour. So I throw some portrait samples up on the screen here. Most of these should be taken between like f2 and f like 3.5 depending on the conditions. I did take this lens into quite a few low light conditions. The first was an anime convention where I got a bunch of cosplay pictures, which you'll be seeing here. And then the second was this like Renaissance fair thing, kind of inside this like classic German tavern thing here in Wisconsin, which was absolutely sick. But the lighting sucked inside, but you'll see some of those samples there. Now when it comes to like optical issues, so to speak, the lens doesn't really suffer from any sort of like distortion. It's, you know, a 35mm on a crop sensor, so 50mm equivalent. So you've really got pretty much no distortion. Like normally I'd show a like before and after correction photo, but it's like pretty much indistinguishable. As far as flare resistance goes, like I've shot literally directly into sunrises with this thing, and it's great. No ghosting, a little bit of loss of contrast as you'd expect, but generally just really impressive performance. And then finally, for chromatic aberrations, if you shoot like, you know, shiny metal, like a car for example, on a very sunny day, you'll see a little bit of purple fringing, but it's pretty insignificant, and I found it easy enough to correct to where I don't see it as an issue. So yeah, generally just like a great little portrait lens for shooting pictures of people. I mean, it's hard to go wrong with a 35mm, or 50mm I guess technically. I did find that it was oftentimes too tight for my tastes, but that's more of personal preference, more than anything. So yeah, this lens is pretty awesome. I liked pretty much everything about it, but the entire time I was shooting with it, I just kept asking myself, like, would I just want to use my Sigma 30 instead? So I have a general bias towards the Sigma. It was the first lens I ever bought when I switched to Sony, and it is a beast, honestly. Like, the image quality is insane, it's cheap, fast autofocus. But the problem is, it's kind of fat, to be honest. It's kind of big, and it doesn't have image stabilization like the Sony 35mm. So if I were to summarize it very quickly, if you have a non-stabilized body, like the ZV-E10 or the A6000, I would go with the Sony 35mm. Like, this lens is pretty awesome, and it has image stabilization. However, if you don't care about stabilization, or you have a stabilized body, I would just get the Sigma 30. It's cheaper, and besides being a little bit bigger, I think it's just superior in pretty much every way, besides the lack of stabilization. If you want to learn more about this lens, like I said, I've had it for like 6 years, so you can check out that video up there, I don't know, on the top somewhere, and you can look into my deep dive on that lens. But that sums it up, guys. Thanks for watching. If you want to buy either of these lenses, there's affiliate links in the description that support the channel. So yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time.